All right, I'm going to check to make sure you're hearing me first. This guy says you are. It's moving, so we're probably good. All right, so I don't think I'll be able to finish this in any of my classes, but you guys have a test coming up, so I'm going to work out a twin with you. And I got to make sure I grab the right one first, because that was the wrong one. This is twin 1. On most classes, I got through at least number 10, but I'll work them all out. So the goal on 1 is to find equation of line in slope-intercept form that pass through the points -2, 5, and 10, 3. Now I'm going to need two formulas to do this. I'm going to need the formula for slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm also going to need point slope form, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Those are the two things I need to know. Now, if you're a kid who's still labeling your pairs, there's nothing wrong with that. Hopefully you're at least doing this mentally, but there's your x1 y1s and your x2 y2s. So my slope is 13 minus 5 over 10 minus a -2. That ends up being 8/12, which you should reduce. 8 is divisible by 4, so is 12. It's 2/3. Now I'm just going to pick a point. I'm going to pick that point right there. I'm going to plug that in for y1 and x1. So y minus 5 equals a slope of 2/3 times x. Now we've talked about this in class. If you enter or exit a set of parentheses with a number, that's being added or subtracted, you just change the sign. That's all you do. Now we're going to kick in the distributive property. 2/3 times x is 2/3. 2/3 times 2 is 4/3. And then we're going to add 5 to the other side. Now, most kids are pretty bad with fractions, so I'll just show this instead of showing you how to do the fraction online anyways. I'm going to go to my calculator. Good habit is to wrap fractions. You don't always have to. But I'm just going to type in 4/3 plus 5. And it says 6.33, which you'll never see on a test. So I'm going to hit the math button on the calculator. I hit the math guy. That's right in the way. Let me move this real quick. I hit math. This menu comes up. Press enter and enter again. And I got 19/3. So y is equal to 2/3 of x plus 19/3. Once you get the slope too, pay attention to the answer choices. You better see a 2/3 in front of x. All right, number 2 is an absolute value equation. You write and solve two equations if absolute value is isolated. And that's been done. Now your first equation is as is. Your second equation, you change either these guys' signs or you change these guys' signs. And I always change the other guy's signs. So -8 plus 2x. And then just do algebra, kids. We're going to add 2x, that makes 6x. We're going to add 6, that makes 14. We're going to divide by 6. And we're going to clean up the fraction. 14 and 6 are both divisible by 2, so that's 7/3. Here we're going to subtract 2x. We're still going to add 6. That's going to be -2. We're going to divide by 2, and we're going to get -1. So these are our answers. We're either 7/3 or we're -1. Here is domain and range. You got to remember that your domain is your values of x. Your range is your values of y. And we are using interval notation. Now this graph will continue its entire life moving to the left. And it will continue its entire life moving to the right. Well, that means it's all x numbers. Think about the x-axis. It covers up the entire x-axis. It's going to go all the way to -infinity, and it's going to go all the way to infinity. Interval notation, that's pretty easy. -infinity to +infinity. In fact, you've been told the domain of a parabola in this class is -infinity to +infinity. It's range that changes. Now, when you write interval notation, you put little first, and then you put the big guy next. Well, -infinity is smaller than +infinity, so it's little. This graph is falling forever to -infinity. That's the small value. Its high value is right here where y is -4. And that is a point that actually exists, so we use a bracket, because if it exists, you use brackets. There's your domain and range. Here we're tasked with graphing an absolute value equation. We're looking for this form. And our equation is really, really, really close. The difference is there's a 4 inside instead of a single x. We need a single x. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull a 4, and we can because 4 and 8 are both divisible by 4. Now, line up with your form and things we've talked about. This says minus h, but this is plus 2. The only way that works is if you take away a negative 2. K lines up perfectly, minus 2. There's your vertex. Okay, back 2, down 2. This guy right here, we call him scale factor, but we think of it as slope. And come on, kids, read. We're drawing a V here. So we're going to rise 4 and run 1 for one side of the V. We're going to rise 4 and run left for the other side of the V. And there is the graph of the absolute value of 4x plus 8 minus 2. Don't believe me? Go to y equals on a graphing calculator and figure out how to type it in. You'll see that graph. All right, number 5. So you're asked to graph two inequalities. And go back to 8th grade on these things. Think about how you were taught to handle things in 8th grade. You're going to solve for y. Just solve for y. You're going to take away 12x. You're going to divide by your negative 4. And that's something you can graph. This crosses the y-axis at negative 2. It has a slope of 3. And it is a solid line. Mine's not perfect here, but it's good enough. Sorry I had to take a break there. Wife was talking. Don't ignore your wife. Same deal on this one. Solve for y. So we're going to take away 2x from the left and the right. And think about the form you're going for. You're going for y equals mx plus b. So that's why I'm doing things the way I'm doing it. Divide out that negative 8. Oh, I messed up, didn't I? Notice I divided by a negative 4 up here. Remember what that does to an inequality symbol? Flips it. That flips it. So I did mess up. Got to catch little things like that. Here I am dividing by a negative, so I will flip that symbol again. Negative 2 over negative 8 is 1 over 4, and negative 16 over negative 8 is positive 2. So that guy has a y-intercept at 2. The slope is rise 1, run 4. These are solid lines. Now I need to talk about shading. This one was a greater. It's saying shade above me. This one was a less. It's saying shade below me. There you go. Nice and simple. So there's your final answer. Here we're tasked with solving a system using the elimination technique. Now, every time you've ever done these have been in the form of ax plus by equals some constant. Well, that's what we're going to do with these equations. We're going to get them in that form. So I'm going to put that 6x on the left. That'll make it negative. I'm going to leave that 16y where it's at, and the constant 22 is going to stay on the right. And I'll do the same thing down here. What you want to do is you want to line things up so that it's easier to do the elimination method. And also, we do use techniques other than algebraically where you have to line things up. So line them up. When I look at, I'm going to attack x, I see this 6 and the 4, and they both enter 12. I'm actually going to do this a little bit different than you might be thinking. I'm going to multiply the top by a negative 2, and I'm going to multiply the bottom by 3. And just think what that's doing. That turns this into a positive 12, and that turns that into a negative 12. Oops, I don't need that there. Don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, distribute that negative. So I'll have 12x plus 32y equals negative 44 because I'm multiplying every term by negative 2. When I 3 the bottom, I'll have negative 12x minus 33y equal to 45. Now I'm just going to add on down. No x's, there's a negative y, and there's a positive 1. So this tells me that y is negative 1. So I have the y value. So I'm just going to plug it in somewhere. I don't know, maybe right there. Negative 11 times a negative 1 minus 4x is a 15. I did this to get x, by the way. That's going to become positive 11. 15 minus 11 is 4. And I divide by the negative 4 and I get x is negative 1. Now, I'm going to want your answers probably as an ordered pair. I don't know, I haven't finished things. But your ordered pair, and remember kids, that's x then y, is negative 1, negative 1. You really couldn't mess this one up. I'm sure you could, but not easily. So there's an elimination. The next one is substitution, and it does have fractions. Don't be scared of that. But you know exactly what y is. Y is 3x minus 6. So everywhere you see a y, you can replace it with 3x minus 6. So we have 4x, and I'm doing the distributive property here, minus 12x plus 24, and I forgot my equal sign there, equals 12. And we're just going to manipulate here. 4 minus 12 is 8, so negative 8x. We're going to take away 24 from 12. That would be negative 12. We're going to divide by a negative 8. That's going to make it positive, and we're going to reduce the fraction down to 3/2. So now we know what x is. We're going to plug it in and get y. Y is, again, we have an equation that says y is 3x minus 6. So we plug that sucker in. Y is 3 times 3/2 minus 6. Okay, well that's 9/2 minus 6. Now, if you do that, you might be thinking 4.5 minus 6 is negative 1.5. It is. Negative 1.5 as a fraction is a negative 3/2. So we actually have an ordered pair here of a 3/2 value for x and negative 3/2 value for y. And if I'm going too fast for you, that's understandable. I'm not going to go slow. I want to get the recording done. You have a pause button. Try using it. All right, number 8, we have a system of equations. It talks about Jack, Bill, and Tom. Now, I'm told that Jack is 3 years younger than Bill. That means that, well, it means that I take away 3 from Bill. There's another equation that goes with this. I could add 3 to Jack. Hold on here. Yeah. I could say Jack plus 3 is Bill. Does that make sense? Jack is 14 years younger than Tom. Okay? So again, Jack is 14 years younger than Tom. Take away 14 from Tom. Or I could add 14 and say Jack plus 14 is Tom. Either one of those work. We're actually going to end up using these two over here on the right. Now, in 7 years, and we know we're writing equations, both sides have 7 years added. Tom will be twice Bill's age. So we're talking about Tom and we're talking about Bill. Tom is going to be twice Bill's age. What I have to do is I have to double that quantity for equality. They age first, then you double. So you got to count for the aging. Now, the reason I wrote these other equations here was because there's a Bill and there's a Tom. So when I see Tom, I can say Jack plus 14. There was already a plus 7. When I see Bill, I can say Jack plus 3. Don't forget to copy down the other stuff that's in there. You can only solve with one equation, one variable, kids. That's why we use substitution property. Now, if we put 14 and 7 together, we'll get 21. If we distribute this, 3 and 7 makes 10. Twice that is 20. So we'll have 2 Jacks plus 20. Then we'll get our Jacks on one side, our numbers on the other. I'm going to take away a Jack from 2 Jack and get a Jack. I'm going to take away a 20 from 21 and get a 1. And then just go back and read your text. Jack is 3 years younger than Bill. So Bill has to be 4. Jack is 14 years younger than Tom, so Tom has to be 15 because you're adding 14. Let's see, that's not so hard. 9 is a compute the product. You're going to use the FOIL method here. First, by the way, that's what I'm doing. FOIL. First is the 4x and a 5x, which makes 20x squared. Don't be the kid who still doesn't understand x times x. Don't be that kid. 4x times 6 is a positive 24x. On the interior, the I will have a negative 20x because 5x times negative 4. And then L for last, we'll do a negative 4 and a 6. We'll say minus 24. And then we'll just combine our likes. 20x squared plus 4x minus 24 is the result of foiling those two things out. You should get that problem. You should. All right, this is determining x-intercepts. And I even tell you that x-intercepts happen when y is 0. And I do want your answer given as an ordered pair. So I'm going to replace f of x, which is a fancy way of saying y, with a 0. And even though the context of this problem is different than the lesson you did in section 4.5, it's 4.5. Section 4.5, look at your notes. You're going to add 27 to the left because you're going to counteract subtraction before you worry about squaring or multiplication. You're going to divide by 3. You get 9 equals x minus 2 squared. And you better know what the opposite of squaring is. The opposite of squaring is a square root. And square roots annihilate squares, kids. We're going to get x minus 2 on the right. Now, we talked about this. If you see a 2 up here, you better have plus or minus, or a panda dies. Root of 9 is 3, plus or minus 3. We're going to add 2. So x is a 2 plus or minus 3. Notice the order I'm writing in this in. 2 plus or minus. So if we do 2 plus 3, we get a 5. If we do 2 minus 3, we get a negative 1. Now, I wanted ordered pairs. Your x values are 5 and negative 1, and they happened when, look at the text, y is 0. So there's your ordered pairs. Those are your x-intercepts of this graph. Number 11. Again, if I'm going too fast, hit the pause button. Complete a table that contains the y-intercept, the vertex, and points to the immediate left and right of the vertex that you would use to graph this guy. So here's your function, twice an x minus a 3 squared plus a 1. It is in the form y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So you already have h and k. It's 3 and 1. Remember, change sign, keep sign. Now, that is actually your vertex. It was in what we call vertex form, which if you're memorizing your forms, you understand. If you're not memorizing, you don't understand. It's you. It's not me. It's you. It's all you. Now, I've even labeled your table here, kids. How do you find a y-intercept when x is 0? What's a number to the left of your vertex? Well, that would be a 2. A number to the right would be a 4. Now you have all your x values. You get your y values by plugging in. So I'm going to plug in this 2. 2 times 2 minus 3 squared plus 1. A 2 minus 3 is a negative 1. A negative 1 squared is 1. Times 2 is 2. Add 1, you get 3. Now, if you paid any attention whatsoever, these pairs match. If you're not listening or whatever, I'm just going to write this down. They match. They are always the same. It's the way it works. Y-intercept happens when you plug in a 0. 2 times 0 minus 3 squared plus a 1. And I know I'm sitting here doing a whole bunch of stuff real quick. You know, if you can't do it, you take out your TI-84, you type in exactly what it says, and quit doing that hunt and peck crap on a calculator keypad like you ain't ever used one. It don't take 10 minutes to type that in. It's 19. There's your table. You don't have to graph it. You're just making a table. All right, write this function in vertex form. So we're going after this. A times x minus h squared plus k. what we need to do is we need to find the vertex. Now, you have a formula that says the x-coordinate of the vertex is at opposite b over twice a. You have that formula. It's yours. Remember, you're in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c is 0. So you're just going to plug your stuff in, go with it. B is a negative 12, opposite that's a positive 12. A is 4, twice of 4. That's 12/8. Always reduce. 3/2. Cool. Now you're going to find the y-coordinate of the vertex. So you're going to do that by plugging that sucker in. So go back to your original equation. You have 4 times t squared, so you're plugging in a 3/2, minus 12 times a 3/2, plus 5. And again, just type it on a calculator, kids. You ain't got all freaking day. Just type it on a calculator and go with it. What's this end up being? That's 9 quarters. That'd be 36 quarters, which is 9. This is going to be 18. 9 minus 18 is negative 9. We add 5, we get negative 4. And I don't expect you to be able to do that. But you just got your vertex to be at 3/2 and negative 4. So you can plug this into this equation over here, okay? X minus 3/2, we're changing sign as we enter parentheses, minus 4, because we keep this guy's sign. It starts with a K, keep it. Now, look, we need an A, right? It's right there. Notice how I lined things up? That's the whole point of forms. It's 4. There she is. Now it's time for some factoring. This is the easy factoring. There's a 1. It's understood. So we need factors of C that add to B. Well, it takes a 3 and a 4 to get to 12. Now, why did I pick on 3 and 4? Because a 3 and a 4 through addition is 7. But if you subtract them both, you got your negative 7. And that just says factor. It's done. 14 is a solve. Now, you must be, well, you don't have to be, but you want to be in this form. It's not always, generally, 90% plus time. So what we're going to do is we're going to move things over to the left because we want to compare for 0, and you have to compare to 0. Have to. Then we're going to factor. The factoring on 14 works a lot like the factoring on 13. We need factors of a negative 10 that add to 7, and I screwed up. This problem does not work, so I'm going to fix it real quick. I'm going to fix this by making this a negative. This is an oops. I messed the problem up, okay? So that would make this positive when I jump over. I'd have x plus 2 and I'd have x plus 5 because 5 times 2 is 10 and 2 plus 5 is 7. Now we use the old cover-up method. That literally says x plus 2 is 0, so I know that x is negative 2. Notice what happened to the sign. Again, it changed. I have x plus 5 is 0. I subtract 5 and I get negative 5. Sign changed. I'm telling you, that's how it works. All right, 15 is also a solved problem, and the numbers are big. Big deal. It helps if you remember your 4th grade multiplication tables. 8, 8, and 24 are all factors 8. We're going to pull an 8. Why are we doing that? Because it makes it easier to work with. That's what it looks like. You're probably going to have to do a little bit of guess and check here, but it should factor out. I think, and I'm just going to try, that I'm going to need a 5x and a 2x to get to 10x squared. So think about those two terms. That creates your 10x squared. Now, I've got this 3. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3 or 3 and 1, however you write it. And I think I need to put it like this. The reason I need to put it like that is because that creates a 6x and that creates a 5x. And the goal is to get to a negative x. So this will work if that is negative and that is positive. Of course, we're still equal to 0. Now, this is just a number 8. Don't worry about it. You worry about the pieces that contain x's. So 5x minus 3 is 0, or 2x plus 1 is 0. Both of those are what we call a two-step equation in algebra. There are two steps. Add 3, divide by 5. 3/5. Subtract 1, divide by 2. Negative 1/2. I'm either 3/5 or I'm negative 1/2. And we're moving on. We got something about a rectangle here at number 16. A rectangle's length is x minus 3 and its width is x plus 5. Its area is known to be 84 square inches. You know, sadly, some of you kids are missing that formula on your formula quiz. That's really disappointing. Anyways, that's area. You plug in 84 in for A, you plug in an x minus 3 for L, you plug in an x plus 5 for width. And then you FOIL. You know, what would Jesus do? He'd FOIL. That's what we're going to do. That's going to give you an x squared minus a 3x plus a 5x minus 15. We're going to compare to a 0. You have to compare to a 0 to factor. I've got a plus 2x. I'm going to take away 84 from 15. I'm going to get minus 99. Now that thing looks ridiculous. You might be looking and be like, there's no way that factors. Yes, it does. I wouldn't have given you the problem if it didn't factor. Factors of 99 are 9 and 11. And 9 and 11 will get you to your goal, so long as the 11 is positive and the 9 is negative. Because that's going to create a negative 99, and 11 minus 9 is a positive 2. So it's going to work. So I know that x is either 9 or x is negative 11. Now look at the context of the problem. Okay? These negative 11 doesn't make sense. This is real. This is actually something that we call extraneous. It means it doesn't work. That's what it means. It does not work. So there's my correct real answer. All right, 17. Person in lockdown or quarantine with nothing better to do decides to build what's called a squirrel catapult. You should YouTube that. A squirrel is launched straight up with initial acceleration of 192 feet per second from initial height of 8 feet. So write an equation. So a sub 0, if you read the text, is initial acceleration. And h0, if you read the text, is initial height. So height as a function of time is negative 16t squared plus 192t plus 8. That's 2.5 points on this. Actually, it's 3 points apparently. I don't know. This may change. Determine how long it takes for the squirrel to reach maximum altitude. So that happens at this little special guy. In this case, it's time, but time is opposite v over twice a. And you better know your ABCs. So a negative 192 over twice a negative 16. Well, that's going to be positive. It's a negative over negative. It's 192 over 32, and that is 6. It takes 6 seconds of flight for that squirrel to reach its max altitude. Part 3 is, what is the max altitude? Well, you know how long it takes. Time is 6, so everywhere you see a t, you replace it with a 6. Now, I wouldn't sit here and waste any of my time doing this because I know I'd be quicker than this on a calculator likely. So I'm just going to my TI-84. I'm typing it in as I wrote it. "584 feet. Dead squirrel." I don't know, maybe. The catapult launchers that you see on YouTube are not that impressive. Small bonus here: when will the squirrel hit the ground and live? You do this with the quadratic formula. Do x equals opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac, all sitting over twice an a. So you just plug into that thing, kids. We're going to use the equation that we wrote up in part 1. So if you're looking at part 1, b is 192, so opposite is a negative 192, plus or minus 192 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 16, times c, which is 8, all sitting over twice a negative 16. I'm going to let my calculator do a good bit of this. I'm going to take a 192, I'm going to square it. What I'm doing is I'm doing this stuff inside the radical. Pay attention to signs, kids. Inside that radical is 37,376. So x equals negative 192 plus or minus the square root of 37,376, all sitting over a negative 32. Now, this root is a big deal. What is that thing? So I'm going to take the square root of that thing. I'm hitting second square root, second ANS. It's about 193.3. Now I'm going to store that answer in my calculator to x. On paper, I will actually say negative 192 plus or minus 193.3 over negative 32, and that's just to help explain what's going on, but this is what I'm going to use in my calculations. See, this says take 192 and add to it that 193, and then divide by negative 32, which is a time of about negative 0.04 seconds, which doesn't make a bit of sense. There's a reason for that answer, but it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. No such thing as negative time. Now, the other time would be where I did the subtraction, because I did the addition up here, and then divided by negative 32. Now, that time makes sense, 12.04 seconds. That squirrel was in the air for a long time, kids. All right, 18, find k such that the slope between these 2 points is 6/5. Now, you have a formula for slope. You're supposed to be memorizing this thing. If you're not, you're probably not passing me, because if you can't do slope, what made you think you belonged in Algebra 1? Oh, I said Algebra 1, didn't I? Algebra 2, kids. Get your stuff together, learn your formulas, they'll save your life. But anyways, this k is a y value. So is 7. See, I'm just substituting into my form. Nothing more. 3 minus negative 2. Now, well, this problem is actually kind of unique, but we're not going to talk about that. You can do a little bit of work here. 3 take away negative 2 is 5. Now, there's more than one way to handle this problem. There really is. But the easiest way is to do it through a technique we call cross multiplication. 5 times k minus 7 equals 5 times 6. Now, usually problems don't work out this way. I could divide the 5 out, but I'm not going to. It's just dumb luck that this worked out the way it did. So I just distributed my 5, multiplied 6 and 5 together, and I have this. Now, you know full well that what you're going to do is you're going to add 35 and get 65. Then you're going to divide by 5, and you can get that k is 13. I'm amazed that that worked out to be a whole number, to be honest with you, but it did. So there you go. That's 18. Just use a formula for slope. 19 is that funky function notation that funks with you. Don't let it. This is x. So everywhere I see an x, that goes there. So twice a 2g minus a 1 squared minus 2g minus 1. Now, I have my 10 commandments in math up on the board. It says 2 or more wrap. You better wrap that 2g minus 1 or it's going to be wrong, plain and simple. If you see something squared, well, that means that you write it twice. I'm just going to distribute this negative. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece right here and we're going to FOIL it. That'd be 4g squared. This is a minus 2g, as is that. So if you take away 2g and you take away 2g, you get negative 4g. And then you do your last, you have a plus 1. Now, if you're wondering why I use these hard brackets, I did it just to put emphasis that I was doing the FOIL method first. Well, now I've got this distributive property. This 2 has to be distributed before I can actually combine like terms. So there's 8g squared minus 8g plus 2, and then minus 2g plus 1, because I'm just carrying stuff over. I'm going to finish my combining of like terms. Looks to me like there's minus 10g and then plus 3. There you go. That is f of twice g minus 1. All right, we're almost done. We're on the easy stuff. Write inequalities equivalent to the following. Now what this is saying you're trapped between -5 and 5, not including. So we're saying that x is somewhere between those two values, but it doesn't include them. Now there's a bracket. Brackets, and I'm actually going to put this on a number line, means that we can contain the point. We contain the point 4, and we're going all the way to infinity. Well, that's just saying that x is greater than or equal to 4, kids. This is a cutoff. I'm assuming it's supposed to be negative infinity 5. Think about a number line here. There's an open dot at 5. Parentheses mean don't contain, and we're shooting to the left. Well, that is the inequality that says x is less than 5. Now this inequality basically says that x is somewhere between those two numbers. It is between 12 and 29, but it's got brackets, so we have to use the equality symbols. What's 21? Find the x and y intercepts of this equation. All right, so let's do our x-intercepts first. That happens when y is 0. We've actually already done one of these earlier today. So 0 equals twice x minus 3 squared minus 12. We're going to add 12. Okay, we're going to divide by 2, and then we're going to counteract this squaring by square rooting. Now, you can't actually take the square root of 6 without a calculator, so don't even bother. The square root cancels out the squares, and then we're going to add 3. So you get 3 plus or minus root of 6. Now, your x-intercepts, you need to be writing these out in order of pairs. Remember, they happened when y was 0, right? Well, you have 3 plus a root of 6, and you also have 3 minus a root of 6. Now, y-intercepts are up next. They happen when x is 0. So that's actually pretty easy to do. Y is twice a 0 minus a 3 squared minus a 12. So a 0 minus a 3 is a negative 3. A negative 3 squared is 9. Times 2 is 18. Take away 12, you get 6. So here's my y-intercept. They happen when x is 0, and I got a 6 as an answer. Pretty simple. 22 is one of these where we're not supposed to do any algebra. We're supposed to figure out which order pair satisfies the solution. I hate wasting time, but I think the answer might be C. I did kind of write this thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug these things in. That's how you do this without doing algebra. Plugging in numbers is not algebra. So negative 6 times 1 minus 2 times 8 minus a negative 1 is supposed to be negative 17. I'm just plugging in and looking. So this is a negative 6, that's a plus a 16, and that's a plus 1. Well, I would say that I was wrong. That is not the correct answer. What I just came up with is a false statement. So this ordered pair doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it's D. So I'm going to look at D. Negative 6 times 2 minus 2 times 3 minus, Z is a negative 1, must be a negative 17. Let's see what this gives us. That is a negative 12. That is a negative 6, and that is a plus 1. That is a negative 17. This is true. Now, you have to be true in all three equations, so you need to be plugging this in the other ones. So I see that 5x, I'm looking off to the left. You got a piece of paper just like I do. I'm looking off to the left over here at the second one. That's what I'm going to plug into. 5 times a 2 plus a y, and y is 3, minus 6 z's, and z is negative 1, must be a negative 19. So that's 10 plus 3 plus 6. Oh, it was positive 19. I copied the equation down wrong. That's true. This is probably our answer. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to check it in all three. So but it's going to be our answer, kids. It worked out for 2, probably works out for 3, and I don't want to waste your time. Then we have some radical simplifications. This is where you use your break apart rules. 250 is 25 times 10. The root of 25 is 5, so 5 roots of 10. Now, I picked on 25 and 10 because I knew the square root of 25. That's what you do. You find the factors of the number, one of which you can take a square root. And the deal is it's got go big or go home. Now simplify this guy. This is the root of 25 over the root of 11. You know the root of 25 is 5. You do not know the root of 11. And the deal is no radicals down low. Well, I talked about this in class. You fix that by multiplying the top and bottom by a root of 11. So 5 times root of 11 is 5 roots of 11. Root of 11 times root of 11 is 11. There's your answer. And the last one of the twin. We have 3 over 2 minus the root of 7. What we're going to do is we're going to multiply the top and bottom by the conjugate. Top and bottom by the conjugate of 2 minus a root of 7, which if you pay attention in class is 2 plus a root of 7. 2 or more wrap, it's my 9th commandment of math. This is actually an easy one. It's just the distributive property up top. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times root of 7 is 3 roots of 7. Good old JC would FOIL down low. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times a positive root of 7 is plus 2 roots of 7. 2 times a negative root of 7 is minus 2 roots of 7. And finally, a negative root of 7 times a positive root of 7 is minus 7. All right, so what do we got? We got 6 plus 3 roots of 7 up top. And down low we have a negative 3 when everything's said and done. So this one can be cleaned up a little bit. 6 is divisible by negative 3, it's negative 2. 3 is divisible by negative 3, it's just minus 1, and 1s are understood. Negative 2 minus the root of 7. And that was a fire alarm, and I finished it in good time. So there's your video. If you missed any instruction, I hope you watch it. You should.